giving you an opportunity to get the full story from the people who tell it best. This is Mediacom News Leaders.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Mediacom News Leaders. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Carol Kelly. Joining us today, president of a partnership for a healthy Iowa, we've got Peter Komendowski. Peter, welcome.
Thank you for having me on the show.
So you deal with addiction on a daily basis, at least that topic. Can we talk a little bit about what the new movement, a powerful new movement, the way that people look at addiction? Yeah,
we're seeing a really systemic change in how people view addiction, where it's no longer the substance, it's the behavior. So, we get these problems where we run into like the opioid epidemic, and we do a great job of trying to snuff it out. But then the people that can't get opioids now get meth, or got fentanyl or heroin, and all of a sudden it's as if we just pushed them someplace else. And overall, when we look at the problem with substance abuse and addiction in America, it seems to be growing, not getting smaller.
Talk to us a little bit about just what you're talking about, that behavior to addiction, and how it compares and it's similar no matter what the actual substance is.
Yeah, this is something that I've seen in parents now, and we've sort of been talking about the messages, but we're learning from parents around the country changing their habits, that they're recognizing that the path to addiction starts at a very young age in their children, and they have to be proactive. And we've learned some fascinating things. Think about this, that from a very young age, when a child, say, opens the refrigerator to get food, if they see beer next to milk, they have the idea that beer and milk are equal. Or if they're in a crib and they're a young child and their parents are constantly taking pictures on them with cell phones or texting, we don't realize it. They're looking at that and their brain is wiring saying, that's what I want to do. That's where I want to be. So even those two simple things, always getting exposed to cell phones and even looking in a refrigerator for food at young ages and seeing alcohol and food next to each other. So we have parents that are learning, saying, wait, I'm separating this from my children. I'm putting the beer and the alcohol someplace else so they don't see it. I want them to see healthy things. I'm not using the cell phone around them, and though I will take some pictures, I try and minimize how much exposure they have because they see other children walking around with these things, and they go, wait a minute, what's a 3-year-old doing with a cell phone in a crib?
And it's not just alcohol or drugs that are the problem. You're finding that there's different, like you said, cell phones. Nobody would have thought that's dangerous.
We're now becoming what they're referring to as a society of behavioral addictions. We now know that even in school, when we try to take cell phones away from children, the anxiety they have is separation anxiety. They're so used to having that phone that when you take it away, they feel separation. The separation anxiety is so strong that it influences their behavior in a negative way. I mean, if you're a mom, think about losing sight of your child for a few minutes. Where are they? That's the same anxiety when you can't find your phone or if somebody takes it away. So what we're now seeing is that if, when they're very young, they're exposing themselves to behaviors where they create this behavioral addiction, when they get older, their propensity for getting addicted to substances is higher. So it's very important that you teach children well. There's an old adage that says practice makes perfect, but practice makes permanent. So what that child does is really risky.
Tell us a little bit about, you've talked about a new movement. Mm-hmm. What is the movement?
Parents are taking away cell phones. They may not be taken away completely, but they may be saying, okay, 9 o'clock at night, they're gone. They're not going to your room, no more computers. They're removing other risk factors, especially one of the big ones we look at is video gaming, which a lot of kids do late at night. Now, we now know video gaming, it's already proven, is a disorder, can be an addiction, and does make people more aggressive and less compassionate, which leads ultimately to violence. Not necessarily specific forms of it, but it makes them less compassionate. Well, we're also figuring out now that if they do entertain video games late at night and lose sleep, or if they're on social media late at night and lose sleep, they're going to get into sort of cycles of negativism, depression, other mental health type of things that might exacerbate where they are in life, that make them more susceptible to substance abuse and addiction. So parents are actually changing the rules. They're saying, listen, we got to take back some of this. No violent video games, no bad food, no candy and cookies instead of good food, and less hours in front of screens. Now, this is important because we've got a younger generation. These are new parents that are learning from people raising children that are teens and tweens and young adults. And they're looking up at that and saying, there's something wrong here. And now the research is starting to show there is. So they're willing to set guidelines and rules that a lot of parents today have trouble with. And we spend so much time keeping up with the Joneses. Well, everybody else is, all their friends have smartphones, all their friends play video games. How can I stop them? Well, now that we realize what's happening, it's not how can you stop them. You must stop them. But it may not be go cold turkey, prohibition, but it sure might be nice to start limiting it.
I have to say, I have a son, and all his friends have cell phones. All his friends are playing the Xboxes and the Switches and that. How, as a parent, do you place those rules and put them into effect, but not have the kids feel left out?
Well, the first thing is to recognize that when children start taking in behaviors that aren't making them real happy, and that's what we're finding out, is that happiness, some forms of mental illness, and just their general disposition is altered in a negative way with too much screen time. So children don't create the time that makes them feel empty or unfulfilled. Parents have control over all of their time. And what we've seen since the 50s is the time that children have that they spend with parents, with friends face to face, has gone down tremendously. As a matter of fact, it's an estimate that of the 60 hours a week the average teenager has that's discretionary, they spend over 50 on screens. Now, before 1950, guess where that time was spent? With parents, with family, with friends, doing school activities, playing with friends. It just wasn't the screen. And we've never really thought of the screen as anything but beneficial, because it has tremendous power to do great things. But so does a hammer. You can build things with it, or you can break things with it. And that's what we're finding. Now, how we really look at this is now, it's not just me, it's not our company that's saying, Partnership for Healthy Iowa has figured out this is a big risk, you have to do something. We're actually seeing parents and communities and faith groups and educational groups say, we're going to start putting a stop to this madness. And we want our children back with us, face to face, doing things, playing, reading books, not being influenced by these other things. And now that they know that that could lead to things like substance abuse disorder, and worse mental health issues and suicidal thoughts and depression, all these things that we really feel strongly are things our children should not be facing, it gives them a lot more motivation to say, wait a minute, don't put the beer next to the milk. Don't always use the cell phone in front of a baby. Teach it to learn and understand that nurturing is not stuff, but hugs and kisses and doing stuff with them. And that's the same for teenagers.
Talk to us about just solutions. What do you see your organization helping the state and helping families and actually conquering this problem? Well,
there's two things that are happening. One, we've seen a huge effort to build digital citizenship tools where people can learn how to minimize the damage, maximize the benefits of dealing with social media. For children, that's important because we're giving a pretty powerful tool and they put stuff up there and it lasts their whole lives. Well, now we're starting to work on tools, and they'll find some of them coming up in the next few months on a Partnership for Healthy Iowa at ahealthyyiowa.org. We're talking about parental citizenship and how their actions can influence the real long-term outcomes that are hurting some of the children that are older. Now, the sad part is we can't change a lot of that damage that's been done to people that have been indoctrinated in all these media expressions because we did not know that it had such potential for harm. The good part is that we have younger generations of children we're raising. And so the first thing is use common sense. That you want your children to love you, not products that they see on the internet or TV. You want them to spend time playing with other kids or doing constructive behavioral things. And we now have plenty of research that says that that's really a healthy thing to do, like take the TVs out of the bedroom, spend more time with your child. You can watch TV with them. It's when everybody's doing everything separately on a screen that's bad. And for those of us that are trying to do this with children that are now teens and tweens and aren't as easy to influence as young children, we have to have the really good conversations about drugs, alcohol, tobacco, video gaming, and say, listen, we're learning that some of these habits that you're doing are bad. We let you do it. It's not that the children are bad, but we've really let you do things that might hurt you, and we're trying to minimize that. So at the very least, enlist them in helping make their younger brothers and sisters healthier.
For parents, is there somewhere to go to learn a little bit more, maybe see some of this research you've talked about today?
Well, this is why we're talking about. For parents, the key is not to be afraid to make a difference. Don't be afraid to cut down screen time. Don't be afraid to talk about drugs and alcohol, because that's what stops most of them. You don't need a book to know what's right, but they're afraid they're not doing what their children want or their neighbors are doing. They need to stand up for their own families and their own kids and realize that if they do it, the neighbor will do it, their friends will do it, and if we all do it together, we'll have the healthiest and best children in the world.
Always a pleasure, Peter. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much for letting me be here.
This has been Mediacom News Leaders, your opportunity to get the full story from the most reliable sources exclusively on Mediacom News Leaders.